Okay, so I did my presentation, I started with Cardiff, and this is the view I see out of my bedroom window. So this is how I essentially know Cardiff. I get up, I open curtains, and it's there, and that's what I see of Cardiff. So I wanted to look at sort of huge places and big areas, and really look at like how it's not changing. It's not changing. Maybe. They've got it on 20, it's got it on 20 seconds, so. Right, so I wanted to look at how people map huge areas, and obviously there's a lot of worlds go around. So you have to have quite big, large-scale maps and how they sort of started, how they were introduced to the world, and how people sort of came about making these significant areas into actual drawings. So I picked up a book at the library, and this is one of the first maps that were in it. As you can see, it's sort of sketchy, the buildings aren't seen from above, they're just sort of like, this is the church, this is the house. And I thought that was really interesting, so I tried to replicate it. This is my terrible drawing of where I live. And this is Liberty Bridge and like what's around it. And I thought, because these ones were done from sketches, I could do the same thing and still get the same sense of reality. But when you actually look at where I live, I got it all completely wrong. And I thought that was really interesting, because it kind of looks at how people see what's around them and how it's kind of distorted just from your perspective. So here's another map, and this one's got lots of roads on it, and it also kind of connects places together. So you can see the sort of migration from one place to another, and how important it is to show people where places are on the map and where they're sort of connected to and who's where as well. So if I thought of my friends in another village somewhere else, I would think of all the roads that connect us together. And I thought that was really interesting. I've completely lost track of what I did. And then I looked at Pauline Monkcombe, I think that's her name, I never get the names. And how she uses lusters to sort of signify what's important, and how she actually positions the lusters so they just look at buildings or roads or the sea, you know, what she actually does with them. And here's another one of her plates. So essentially they're transfers with a bit of luster on. It's quite simple, it's a little bit technical, you know, for lusters and stuff. But I really liked this idea of highlighting places and significant things. So here's the castle, a bit different. I also wanted to look at the sort of juxtaposition between places. So you've got really Gothic architecture next to really classical architecture, and they're just sort of butted up against each other. Now this sort of shows how people thought, when they were building this building, let's make it Gothic, because that's what's important. It's got to look nice, it's got to be pretty, it's got to be rich, it's got to be covered in little gargoyles and stuff, it's got to be really impressive. And obviously that was the style of the time. So you go inside and there's more richness and more importance, and it's really lavish, gold paint everywhere, garish, it's a bit gross really when you really look at it. And then you can see what's outside of it. This is just an imprint on the grass where something used to be. Is this more important than what's inside the castle? Is this not more important than what they saw as truly significant, just what stuff looked like? So they had really impressive buildings, really big, like, you know, it was all tidy, it was clean, everything was well painted, and then you look outside at this basic structure, something that was built to fortify. And what's important to me about all of this together is this. Rock. This is one of the walls from the inside of the cube, and I just love the geology. The whole thing covered in little shells and things. It was amazing just to look at how impressive just the limestone itself was. And then I started thinking about where the limestone came from, and how important that was, because both these two buildings butted up against each other were made of the same substance, and that was the local limestone. So I looked at what was now in the city. Everyone knows this, it's just a walkway throughout the city, and it's made of granite. Now this granite is from nowhere near here. They are made of igneous plutons that probably came from either Scotland or Dartmoor. Now this kind of amplifies how important it is that today we have the ability to transport huge substances. Huge amounts of granite, which isn't very light. And it just shows that what's now important to us is how rich the substance itself is rather than the look of it. Now, we're going to continue with geology. This time we're going to look at what's important to the landscape. This is Big Pit, for those of you that don't know it. It was essentially a coal mine. And I think this is what kind of defines Wales, to me anyway, and connects it to the geology beneath it. So, you've got the industry of Wales and the coal mines and coal seams beneath it, which kind of, I don't know, it just sort of, it makes sense, doesn't it? You've got areas where there are coal seams. Once you dig down, you think, oh great, I'm going to make a coal mine here. And this is important everywhere. This is where I come from. This is Ross. There isn't much underneath Ross. It's 2 miles long and it's a bit crap, really. Sorry, Ross. But it kind of signifies what's above the ground and what's beneath it. You know, it joins them together in this sort of weird way without actually taking what's out of the ground, you know, and putting it on a building. So you can see that everywhere around Ross is just sort of green, it's fields, because it's got quite good vegetation. And when you think about the industry in Ross, you probably think there is none. But when I think about industry in Ross, I think about this. This is a farm. This is what I normally cycle past on a sort of daily basis. But then when you juxtapose it with these other places, these places that are joined by roads, places that are joined by migration, by links, by people, it gets completely different. Why are you suddenly changing? Come on. This is Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe obviously looks really different. This is a steelworks. And this is because what's below Scunthorpe is steel, it's iron, it's copper, it's all these different oxides. And it's really interesting to see what's below the ground that's made a huge impact on what's above the ground. Just think about that. Now this has obviously impacted our industry. So this is some place, I don't know where they came from. I saw them at the Museum of Life, Welsh Life, when I went there the other day, just to sort of scope out what's about Wales. It's interesting. And I thought about the plates and how the industries that we work in actually developed from what was beneath them and what's now above them. So in China you've got all these wonderful porcelain factories because what is nearby is kaolin, it's porcelain, it's the mountain that the stuff that the porcelain's made out of comes from. And how interesting that the culture and the people and the links and the maps and the roads and everything came together to make porcelain. And how it's different here, where we made our ceramic factories above coal seams because we needed the power rather than the clay that's all around us. And then I looked at Diane, which is her name. Diane, who's made these really nice little pots, and we saw them at Craft in the Bay a few weeks ago. And I thought they were really interesting because they kind of emanate that sort of structure, you know, those seams that run through them. I thought if you change the colour of the seam to match whatever was on a geological map, which I actually happen to have and I really like geology, just happened to change the colour of what's on this to match the geological map. You could really show the foundations of each city by a different colour based on the map. And that was just an idea that we were bouncing around for